everybody, and welcome back to another video. My name is Sarah, and today we're going to be going through my May wrap-up. So in May I finished 6 books, and then I am actually currently in the middle of 2. So we'll go through the 6 books that I finished, and then I will mention at the end the 2 books that I am currently reading. I will say overall this month was pretty good. I did have 1 5-star, a 4.5 star, and then a couple like 3.5 stars. So I do think it was a pretty good book. There wasn't really anything that I would say I strongly disliked. So the first book that I read in the month of May was actually an audiobook that I listened to. It is a nonfiction book. So it's kind of a long title, so I do need to read it off to you. It's All in Her Head: The Truth and Lies Early Medicine Taught Us About Women's Bodies and Why It Matters Today by Dr. Elizabeth Coleman. I usually don't rate my nonfiction books that I read just because I find them kind of weird to rate, unless it was like just hands down I absolutely loved it, then I'll give it 5 stars. Otherwise I leave it unrated, which was the case for this one. This book basically takes us through each of the 11 body systems, organ systems in the human body, and kind of the history behind different medical practices behind them, and how much of medicine has been misinformed in the beginning for women's bodies or biased in treating women's bodies. There's a lot of discussion about how the different organ systems are just structurally different in women's bodies, how different diseases showcase different symptoms for women versus men. And I did find this book really interesting. I will say it did get kind of repetitive, but at the end of the day, a lot of the misconceptions for each of the body systems all stem from the same thing, whether that be from the idea that women shouldn't be physically strong, shouldn't do physically taxing activities, or when it comes down to the idea of there are certain body systems that were just completely ignored in women, thought as to not be important, things like that. I will say another thing to keep in mind is if you don't like the discussion of different diseases or injuries, things like that, you might want to steer clear from this book. It definitely did make me feel a bit queasy at times. I will say there's a reason why I would never have gone into the medical field, but overall I did really enjoy it, and I did find it very interesting. There was some very informative points, even though it did get repetitive at times. So then the next book that I read was Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Farseer trilogy. The Farseer trilogy is Robin Hobb's first trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings, which is her overall overarching universe across almost all of her books. I think she's got 5 trilogies and like 1 quartet, something like that, that all make up the realm of the Elderlings. And the Farseer trilogy is the first one. And again, this is the second book. In this series, we are following Fitzchivalry Farseer. He is the bastard son of the king in waiting. So in the first book, Assassin's Apprentice, we start out when Fitz is 6 years old. He gets sent back to the royal family from his mother, and from there we watch as he grows up. And quickly it's decided that he's going to be training as an assassin in order to stay, I guess, relevant and useful to the royal family and not be basically disposed of. And so we are following through this series of books as Fitz is growing up and trying to find his place in this royal family, as well as getting unintentionally embroiled in all of the political things happening in this kingdom. Now, in the first book, we're following him from the age of about 6 to maybe 15. In this second book, we're following him from 15 to maybe 18. And I will say, as much as I did really enjoy the first one I gave 3.5 stars, and I know that maybe doesn't sound like I really loved it, but I truly did. It was just very slow. The second one, I gave 4.5 stars. I really had a lot of fun with this second one. We really get to focus a lot more on Fitz and his different relationships with all of these different characters. We really get to focus on how he's really struggling, more so in this one, on who he wants to be and what he wants out of life versus what is expected of him as the royal bastard and as the king's assassin. I don't know, if you watched one of my earlier videos, I did discuss that while these books are about Fitz and his role as the king's assassin, a lot of this is more focused on it's a more character focused series. We're really focused on Fitz and his relationships with both himself and these other characters. The side characters are super vibrant. I really love them, and this one actually really delves into kind of the political turmoil. A lot of things are basically boiling over in the second book, and I just really had a great time with this. I really think the different political plot lines were super interesting, as well as Fitz's both internal and external conflicts that he went through. And again, I gave this 4.5 stars. After that, I read Murder Under Her Skin by Stephen Spotswood. This is the second book in the Pentecost and Parker murder mystery series. So this murder mystery series follows two female detectives in 1940s New York. In this book, they are actually not in New York. They are in a little town in Virginia. We're actually going back to the traveling circus that one of our main characters, Will, was originally working with before she joined into the detective agency, because the tattooed woman has been murdered, and it is suspected that Will's mentor, kind of the knife-throwing specialist, was the one that killed her. And then we are following Will and Miss Pentecost as they go and decide to investigate this murder further, because they don't believe that Will's mentor was the murderer. And I enjoyed this. I will say I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. I really liked the New York setting in the first one. I really liked the closed, locked room murder mystery of the first one, and while this one was interesting, it just didn't really have those same kind of setting vibes that I really enjoyed. We do get a little bit more of Will's character, as well as kind of more of her background, especially getting a better taste of how she lived and what people kind of thought of her when she was working in the circus. This was an interesting murder mystery. It's kind of got the more small town vibes, and we do get more of a view of the circus life, which was an interesting setting. Overall, I gave this 3.5 stars. And then at the same time, I was also listening to the audiobook of The Watchers by A.M. Shrine. This is a horror novel. We are following our main character, who one day was driving along this road kind of in the middle of this very remote countryside in Ireland, and suddenly her car just completely stops. Her watch stops working, her phone stops working, all of her electronics just completely shut off. And this happens at like a dead end leading into this forest. Now, instead of, getting out of her car and backtracking, she ends up going further into the forest on foot, because she recognizes that she has not seen another house or another car for hours on this road. And so she goes further into the woods, and as the daylight kind of starts to fade, she sees this like light out further into the woods and starts going towards it. And when she gets to the light, she realizes it's a bunker, and she sees a woman at the door of the bunker shouting at her to run. So she runs, gets in the bunker, and meets the woman along with two other characters, who quickly lock the doors to the bunker, and suddenly all of these unearthly screams start happening, and she learns that she has to kind of fight to survive with these 3 other characters who have been trapped in this bunker for various amounts of time. They can go out into the forest during the daytime, but once nightfall hits, they have to be in the bunker or they will be killed by whatever these watchers are. And so it's a kind of a survival story, and a horror story as they discover more of kind of what this bunker is, why it's here, what these watcher creatures are. And while I enjoyed this, it was entertaining. I did give it 3 stars because of a couple of different things. So the writing was a bit over flowery. I like flowery writing. I like kind of that purple prose aspect, and I don't know if this is because I was listening to it instead of reading it on paper. Maybe if I read it physically, I would have liked it more, but listening to it, it just felt overdone and was kind of a bit too much. Another thing that I kind of struggled with was the characters felt like the author really wanted you to be emotionally attached to them. The author was really trying hard to make you care for them and give them kind of like little bits of backgrounds outside of who they were in this bunker. However, they still managed to feel very flat and one-dimensional, and it just felt like the author was trying too hard to get you to care about these characters that in the end I didn't care about them as much as maybe the author wanted me to. But overall, I did find this very entertaining. Two of the big plot twists were pretty predictable. I did especially see the main one coming from quite far off. But overall, I did find this book quite entertaining. I was, engaged in it from the get-go, and so I did give it 3 stars. So then after that, I read The Electric Kingdom by David Arnold, and I will say right off the bat, this is a new favorite of mine. I gave this book 5 stars and I absolutely loved it. So this is a YA post-apocalyptic novel, and we're basically following 3 characters in this world after this fly flu has come through. It is still active. These flies are like murderous, carnivorous flies that kind of work in hordes, I guess. But we are following 3 characters. We have Nico, who is sent on a journey to find this possible portal thing, along with her dog. And then we are following Kit, who is 12 years old, and he grows up in this town that is just him and 3 other people. They kind of all have their own building, and then they live in this old abandoned theater. And then our 3rd character is the Deliverer, who you quickly realize has lived lives over and over and over again. They're on their 160th life, and they're following these red books that have different instructions in them, and they are kind of set on trying to slowly bring the world back to some sort of order. You kind of know that that is their general driving goal, but you're following these 3 characters as slowly their stories all converge together, and I absolutely adored this. The writing in here is beautiful. I tabbed several places through here. I really enjoyed our characters. The premise of this novel makes it sound like it's a much bigger, bolder, kind of grander story than what it actually is. It really is a very quiet novel. We are really focused on just these characters as they, I guess, go through these pivotal points in their life over the course of maybe a week or 2 weeks, and kind of really discover the world outside of what they've always known. Nico has always grown up in this farmhouse. Kit has always lived in this town. The Deliverer is more of a mystery character, I guess. But then suddenly, Nico goes on this journey. Kit ends up having to go on a journey as well. And it's really them kind of learning who they are in a world bigger than their tiny little worlds that they have grown up in, and then learning to suddenly have to interact with other people, whereas they've maybe grown up with just various very small secluded circles. And then it's the idea of trying to kind of protect an innocence in yourself and protect an innocence in other people. And overall, I just really enjoyed this book a lot. It made me cry. If you want to see me cry on the internet about this book, go watch 2 videos ago. Maybe watch the end of it. That is where I get very emotional over this book. But I definitely think it's one of those stories that just really, it kind of focuses more on emotion and kind of character development. It's another very character-driven story, but I had an amazing time with this, and I highly recommend it. And like I said, I did give it 5 stars. And then the final book that I finished in the month of May is Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling. This is the Illumicrate, I think it's called Evernight. Their Evernight subscription. It's their quarterly horror subscription, so you get 4 books a year. Caitlin Starling is one of my favorite horror authors. She's only written 2 other books. Well, she's got 2 other books and a novella. I have not read her novella, but I did absolutely love The Luminous Dead and The Death of Jane Lawrence. So this is her newest novel, and I will say I was a bit disappointed in it. I did enjoy it, but it didn't quite live up to the same level of expectations that The Luminous Dead and The Death of Jane Lawrence set. But I will say this cover is about the scariest part of this book. So in this book, we are following our main character, Tamsin. She is a head researcher at this company that is pretty shady, but has its fingers in the pot of like all sorts of different things in the city San Sirocco. And this city is sinking, and Tamsin is head of the research team that has to discover why it's sinking and how to stop it. And quickly she discovers that her basement is actually sinking faster than the rest of the city. And pretty soon, as she's monitoring the sinking of her basement, a door that was never there in the first place magically appears in her basement. And then one day through this door comes a doppelganger of our main character. And I don't want to say too much more. The synopsis does give a little bit more information, but I don't really want to give too much more because I think it kind of gives it away a little bit. Now, I will say this book is similarly slow-paced as her other two novels are. However, while her first two books, the slow pace like lends to the steadily increasing sense of dread that you get that kind of like explodes at the end. This one, you get that in the beginning, the dread, and then it kind of peters out a bit, and then it comes back, and then it kind of peters out again. There's never, for me, there was not that steady increase, that gradual increase that then culminates to the climactic end. There was obviously a climactic end in this book. There's a climax, because, you know, all stories have some sort of climactic point, but the dread didn't build in the same way. I did find our main characters very interesting. They were pretty compelling to read from, and while I was entertained and I was interested in this concept that Starling was working with in this book, I just, like I said, it did not quite lend to the same level of creepiness as her other books did. I do still think this was a pretty interesting premise alongside her other two, where she kind of tends to take an idea that's pretty common and then flips it in some way on its head. And I think Starling did manage to do this with the idea of a doppelganger. I did think that managed to work. I just, yeah, again, missed that level of dread that I was really hoping to get out of this book. But I did end up giving it, I think, 3 stars. So those are the 6 books that I finished in May. Now to talk about the 2 books that I'm actually right in the middle of. Currently I am exactly halfway through Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. This is the 3rd and final book in the Farseer trilogy. I'm really enjoying this. It is taking me quite a while to get through. It is kind of slow going because this is actually 850 pages long and the text is super small. So the slower pace of me reading it has nothing to do with my enjoyment and more to do with the fact that it's just quite a dense book. But in this book, basically we are obviously dealing with the repercussions of everything that came to a head in the 2nd book. And I feel like this book is going to set up, it's kind of leaving little seeds of things that I think we're going to find blooming in later series in this whole realm of the Elderlings, which I'm excited about. I can kind of see a little bit of those seeds planted. This is a quest story. This book itself is a quest novel, as the title indicates. And while I like quest novels, this has a lot of traveling involved. Like, Fitz, our main character, is just traveling for a good chunk of this first half of the book, which I personally don't enjoy as kind of in fantasy books, or just in books in general. It kind of depends on how it's done. With it being so long, it is a bit much for me. However, I'm still really enjoying this, and I think I've reached a point where the story is going to kind of change. There's more traveling that's going to be happening, but I think we're kind of reaching kind of some turning points in the aspect of the traveling, or at least who Fitz is going to be with going forward. But yeah, I am halfway through this and plan to obviously finish it, and like I said, I am really enjoying this, and I'm just really enjoying Robin Hobb as an author, and this trilogy just overall. And then the second book that I am reading, I'm actually listening to over audiobook, and that is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. This is the first book in the Bridgerton series. I have been debating for a while picking this series up, and I kind of figured I wanted to do it over audiobook because I'm not really a romance reader in general, and this is a historical romance novel, but I figured it would be just something kind of light and fun to listen to, and then finally with the newest season of the Bridgerton series, it is a TV show. If you know you're unaware, it is a Netflix show, very, very popular. I have not watched it myself, but the latest series just got released and there was a lot of excitement over it, and I finally was just like, I think I'm just gonna listen to the book, because I was wanting to pick up an audiobook anyway, and then I was wanting just something kind of light and fun, and so I picked this up. So if you have an Audible subscription, actually it is included in their general catalog, where you don't need to have a credit to listen to it. You can just download it at any time. So that's what I did. So I'm having a lot of fun with this. I've actually got about 4.5 hours left, so I could have finished it today before I filmed this, but I got really sidetracked with a lot of other things and just wanted to get this filmed. But basically, the Bridgerton series is 8 books long because there are 8 Bridgerton siblings, and this is a historical romance. We're in Regency era London, so I think this book right now is taking place in 1813, and we are following one of the middle children, Daphne Bridgerton. She is the 4th child, and basically each of these books follows a different Bridgerton as they kind of get introduced into society and then find their romantic partner. And so we are following Daphne and the Duke. Simon, his first name is Simon. It's basically fake dating, how their thing sets up, where basically Daphne wants to find a husband. She wants to be married, but she doesn't get a lot of suitors, because according to her, everybody wants to be her friend, but nobody really views her romantically. And then Simon, the Duke, does not want to be married. He doesn't want the attention of all of the eligible ladies and their mothers, but of course, because he's a duke, he gets a lot of that attention anytime he goes out to any social outings. So they have decided that they're going to fake an attachment to one another, which is basically dating, where Simon says that if he shows interest in Daphne, that is then going to make all of the other eligible men realize that she's a desirable woman or whatever, and it's going to bring in a lot of suitors for her, and then her showing interest in him is going to kind of ward off the other ladies from him, if that makes sense. And so they have this little arrangement, and you can imagine how that turns out. But I'm having a really good time. It's actually really fun to listen to. It's just kind of one of those cute little, it has me giggling with their banter and the cute, just sweet little moments, and ugh. Yeah, I'm having a good time with it. I can't say it's mind-blowing. Honestly, it's probably a 3.5 star, because there are some frustrating points. Daphne is a really interesting character, but the author seems very hell-bent on making the "I have 4 brothers" kind of thing about her personality. They're trying to just make it a point of her personality, and it's no, she's so much interesting. She's such an interesting character without that. You don't need that. So that's kind of annoying. I can't say it's gonna be my next favorite thing, but overall, I'm very entertained and I'm having a great time listening to it. So yeah, that is the other book that I am currently in the middle of. Those are the 6 books that I read in the month of May, and the 2 books that I'm in the middle of. if you've read any of these books or if you're interested in reading any of them, let me know down in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you consider sticking around and subscribing if you haven't already. But as always, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!